afectuoso saludo para todos. Aquí estamos de nuevo para continuar todo este proceso de información que hemos querido compartir con ustedes.
Hello, a warm greeting to everyone. Here we are again to continue this whole process of information that we have wanted to share with you for some time now about the listening process and the preparation of the centenary of the work that we will celebrate in 2028. As you know, to give a little history, in 2023 we had the listening process in the region with the surveys and the different mechanisms that there were, from which we obtained a series of conclusions that we already talked about in a previous video. These conclusions, as we announced to you at that time, fed into the regional assemblies that took place in February and March of this year 2024. First it was the women's assemblies, then the men's. We have recently received these approved conclusions with some small suggestions and modifications that have already been incorporated. This is what has really happened so far. Now we have completed the process. What will happen now? There are certain phases that we want to go through now, always accompanied by you. The first thing is the ordinary General Congress of the work, which will take place, God willing, at the end of April and beginning of May of next year 2025. This is what the Father announced a month or so ago. Recently, in one of his last messages, this General Congress will take advantage of the conclusions of our regional assemblies of the Caribbean region and of all the other regions. Of course, some guidelines will emerge from there that will allow us to establish a regional strategic plan. It will be done in all the regions because this is how it is indicated to be done after the General Congresses for the next 4 years. This is a strategic plan that will allow us to concretely prepare for the centenary of the work. But there is one detail that I do not want to leave out, which is that the same year 2024 the restructuring of our region was completed. The 3 countries that formed the region of Venezuela, the Dominican Republic and Trinidad and Tobago, have joined Puerto Rico, now being what we already know, the Caribbean region. Since Puerto Rico was not part of our region at the time the regional assemblies took place, they did have their listening process. The women have had it recently, and the men will have it in the next few weeks, their meeting and their concluding phase. Before I go on to talk to you about those priorities for our region that have come out of the regional assembly, let me remind you of something. Each regional assembly produced a different document, one for women and another for men, because that is how the work works. Some of us, because of the work we do, have had the opportunity to be in both areas, and that has allowed us to identify the priorities that will be like the general conclusions that are applicable to our entire region, both men and women. In this way, we will live what St. Josemaria taught us. The women's section of the Men's Association of the Work are like 2 donkeys that pull the cart in the same direction. Now I would like to communicate to you what we have identified as the 10 regional priorities that come out of this process of listening in which we have all participated. Although let me tell you that there are not 10, there are really 11, because there is one priority that is common, which came out in the documents of both men and women. And that basically becomes a starting point and a source for all the other priorities that we are going to identify. And that priority number 11, which we are going to make number 1, is to be centered on Christ, that each one of us strives for a real identification with Christ. To that same extent we will be able to prepare for the centenary. We will be able to serve the church better. We will be able to be better, each one of us. Pope Francis has told us with a very clear example how we are going to talk about priorities. Pope Francis has said, the church is not an NGO, the church is not a company. The church is not just any association. We are not the Church of God, and that is why what we want to communicate to you are 10 priorities that have as their source and origin the centrality of each person.
That each person is truly centered on Christ, as the Father has told us for many years. Keeping in mind that first priority that is common to all, and that is the source for all our ideas and priorities. Let us all go together to review the 10 priorities that we have established for our Caribbean region as a result of this process of listening to the regional assemblies and preparing for the centenary of the work. We have tried to group the 10 priorities that I spoke to you about earlier into 3 large groups, because this way it seems to us that it is easier to understand and the classification is simpler. We have entitled the first group "The Work Is and Will Always Continue to Be a Great Catechesis." Then we will have a large second area that is called Humanizing Our Environment. And thirdly and lastly, a chapter that we have called The Work of Caring for the World. Let us then state each of the priorities that are included in these 3 groups. And I want to remember, as I was saying before, that these are very broad ideas that we will try to make more specific. Remembering that the work is and will always continue to be a great catechesis. This first section that we have mentioned is what our founder taught us, and almost 100 years later people have told us that what they continue to expect and need from the work is the formation that we offer both to the members of the work and to all those who approach its apostolates. In this sense, we have identified 3 priorities. The first, to achieve a formation that gives wings, it means, that is oriented more to the person's being than to making it start from a personal knowledge of the conscience that each one has of his own mission, and that leads us to be authentic in life. Secondly, a formation that starts from listening, that is born from this whole process of listening that we have carried out. That is therefore more adapted to the needs of the public that we have in front of us, and therefore, that knows how to innovate in the methods, in the resources, and in the language to always be current. And finally, in this chapter of formation, the great catechesis that is the work, to obtain a formation that moves us to serve others, that gives tools so that everyone can become good shepherds, that trains us to provide accompaniment, and in this way we can reach many more people in many more environments. Then comes the second major section that we have entitled Humanizing Our Environment, and that includes 4 priorities that are added to the 3 previous ones. We have identified the need to promote lifestyles and spaces that promote the culture of true friendship, where everyone can develop a full life, and this is achieved by relying on solid and stable bonds. The second priority is to achieve greater openness, acceptance, and understanding both at a personal and institutional level, where no one feels excluded. The invitation to take on the challenge of intergenerationality, that is, to listen to young people and work with them, knowing how to integrate the older people into this. That the older people understand the young, that the young understand the older people, and we can all work together. And last but not least of these 4 priorities, one that we all carry very close to our hearts, which is to highlight the importance of housework, the value of the family and its transformative effect on people and society, and therefore, understanding that it is a task that corresponds to both men and women. Finally, we come to the third and final section, which is the work of caring for the world. Here we also identify 3 priorities. First, something that sounds very familiar to all of us, which is work well done. Continuing to deepen and promote the value of the human and divine dimension of each person's work. Secondly, strengthening the culture of sustainability of the members of the work and of all the entities that Opus Dei promotes in each country. And finally, as the 10th priority of this chapter of the work of caring for the world, we have entitled Social Responsibility. In other words, all the social initiatives that the work carries out, we have to promote them, we have to continue doing them, we even have to make them better communicated, so that they are better known to all people. And that also includes knowing how to listen to the needs that are presented to us in the social sphere, in order to be able to plan to reinforce the initiatives that we already have and to propose new adventures in this whole sense of helping others. Dear friends, now that we're heading towards the end of this encounter, I would like to explain how you can search for these 10 priorities that we just mentioned, and where each and every one of you can turn to carefully view all of this material and go on with your personal reflection. We invite you to head to the works website of our countries. For Trinidad and Tobago, we are going to enable an English website, and there you will find the following: Now we've reached the end of this encounter we've had on this channel. On this occasion, to sum up what we know about the regional assemblies, I don't want to end without, and I want us all to do it together. In first place, thanking the Father, Fernando Ocariz, the Works Prelate, for letting us all participate in this initiative in preparation for the centenary. Listening to us all has been a formidable experience.
Sacar todas estas conclusiones y estas prioridades que hemos podido analizar juntos ha sido una experiencia formidable.
And I'm sure that all of these will help us to keep making the work with more hope. In the other hand, it won't be fair if I don't thank all of you, all the works members, all the cooperators, all the St. Raphael youth, and a lot of people who, without being part of the work, have participated in this process and have listened to us, because that will help us grow and to serve better to others and the church, which is what we want. I don't want to say goodbye without letting you know that we've carried out all this process commemorating the 50th anniversary of St. Josemaria's journey to America in 1974. And we have to thank him and ask him, and that's why I ask you for your prayers, for the outcomes of this assembly. And we have to thank him for anticipating all these mechanisms such as the regional assembly that allow us to look to ourselves, examine us all over and go for new paths to serve God, the church, and all souls. We're going to keep making the work with your help, above all with the help of our Father Saint Jose Maria who is in heaven, in the Caribbean, and from the Caribbean. Thank you all.
Gracias a todos.